Welcome to DigitalK.
Crowdfunding, I'm here to share with you the different trends, but for me, crowdfunding is really fun because it gives the opportunity to interact with your community, but also get a brand awareness for your product or your project. Crowdfunding is the idea of people putting money together in order to support and fund a project. And crowdfunding, when we look at it, is actually the new. If we go back to the 18th century, actually Mozart used it to crowdfund 3 concertos by pre-selling the program of the concertos. Another fun fact is actually the Statue of Liberty, where French and Americans worked together to crowdfund the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. To give you some key dates in the history of crowdfunding, Artist Chair, which was the first crowdfunding platform for a cultural project, was created in 2001. But the first use of the term crowdfunding was actually in 2006 by Michael Sullivan. The crowdfunding really got democratized in 2008 by the creation of IndieGogo, and a year later with Kickstarter, and it's what really pushed crowdfunding globally. One other major key date in the history is 2012 with Jobs Act under Obama's administration, that allowed the equity crowdfunding in the United States. And as I said, crowdfunding is really developing. I get this question very often of where is crowdfunding at? And it continues to move forward and forward, going from 530 million in 2009 to almost now. It's an industry that is going to be worth almost 100 billion in the coming years. So now I'm going to talk to you about the different ways to crowdfund. One of the probably most one is actually the donation-based crowdfunding, which is the idea of you give money and in exchange you just have the happiness of supporting the project, and it applies for causes, non-profit and charity projects. And here are some of the main platforms. Gofundme, which we actually have a partnership with them. All the non-profit and cause projects are now going to Gofundme. Just Giving, and even Facebook. You probably have already seen it in your feed, but now you can support causes on Facebook, and when it's your birthday, instead of getting presents, you can ask your friend to support a cause that is important to you. Here are some examples of big campaigns that we had on the platform. Time's Up, which is a campaign to harvest funds for legal defense for women who are being harassed. Or another one, to support the victims of the mass shooting in Las Vegas 2 years ago. Now let's move on to the rewards-based crowdfunding, which is the idea of pre-selling. You have a product and you don't have the money to go to production, and you are gonna pre-sell the product on a platform. And that's why it works well for all the consumer electronics, the products in general, and also the cultural projects. And the reward-based crowdfunding fills this gap in the funding industry where you don't have that many investors supporting startups in the hardware, mostly market B2C space. The main platforms being Kickstarter and IndieGogo, but you also have local platforms depending on what's your market. If your market, you have a local product and your ambition is only to address your local market, you have Campfire in Japan, Ulule in France, Startup Next in Germany, or Verkami, for example, in Spain. Some of the projects we had on the platform, transportation is actually a big trend, and even more so since Mate, which had already ran a campaign on IndieGogo a few years back and was very successful. But they did one end of last year, and they raised 14 million on the platform for a foldable e-bike, and there are now about 18 in our in-demand program. Another one that was the biggest until Mate came, but it was FlowHive for a connected beehive project out of Australia. And it shows also that you have transportation, but all the outdoor or impact are also very strong in terms of trends. That's a funny one I like to share, because for me it's a crazy project. The Accent Wear Cat Ear headphones, which are actually headphones where you can listen to music, but with the ears, you can actually share the music you're listening to your surrounding. And you're like, who is going to buy this kind of product? And if you look at, they were based in the US. And if you look at the project, you are like, if you limit it to just the US market, because you can limit on the platform to which audience you want to address. And if they had limited it just to US market, potentially they wouldn't have raised more than 3 million. But because they did the campaign globally, it was actually a big trend in Asia and more particularly in Japan. Now let's move on to the equity crowdfunding, like I said, which has really developed in the past 5 to 6 years. And it's the idea of, in order for the money you give, you are going to get share of a company. And it makes a lot of sense for startups in the technology, sports, biotech space, but also for some small and medium company. If we take I'll come later to that, but here are some of the main platforms, Seeders and Crowdcube probably being the most famous one. Microventures, we had a partnership also with IndieGogo and ran several equity crowdfunding campaigns, mostly for actually small and medium businesses. For example, Brewdog, which is a brewery chain, UK-based company, and ran, I think, 3 campaigns on the platform and raised several millions in order to really develop and grow. Another funny one for me, Etergo, which is the Dutch Tesla on 2 wheels, and that used equity crowdfunding in order to raise funds and to develop. The next one I wanted to talk to you about is debt crowdfunding, also known as crowd lending or peer-to-peer lending. And it's actually platforms that are doing the job of the bank in the idea of you are going to lend money and get money back with interest, like you would do it with a loan at the bank. And it really applies for small businesses, but also personal projects. And here are some of the main platforms. On the left side being the European platforms, and on the right side, the US platform. And it really shows, if we take the example of October, which is a French crowdfunding platform, it really shows how this market, like this industry, the crowd lending, is really going fast, because they were created only in November 2014, and now are like almost 17,000 lenders that lended more than 300 million. So it goes really, really fast. Now let's move on to the last piece of the crowdfunding, which is, for me, I think, the future of crowdfunding, which is a tokenized crowdfunding. And you have the ICO and the STO. So ICO, I won't get too much into it, since now they don't raise really that much money, but let's more focus on the STO part. And STO is security token offering. It's the it can be either equity share or revenue share. And it's this idea of I create a token and I'll either get equity in a company or revenue share of the company. And it makes a lot of sense for startups, small and medium companies, but also real estate, like Ethan explained it in his keynote, the idea of I can divide an apartment. Instead of buying one unit apartment, now I can buy just a little piece through token of this apartment. Or intellectual property and for cultural project makes also a lot of sense. Like for a movie, now you are going to fund a movie, and instead of just getting some swag from the movie, now you'll be able to get revenue on it. On IndieGogo, we actually did two STO. One was for the first one was for a football club in the US, and it was 5 million. And the latest one was for St. Regis Aspen Resort in the US, where they raised 18 million through security token offering in equity. There is one part that I wanted to talk to you is no matter which crowdfunding you are going to do, crowdfunding isn't magic. Crowdfunding, it's all about marketing, and what's very important if you want to make it succeed is create a community, because you need to have a strong community and an engaged community, like big. That means when I say community, I say mostly email, because at the launch of the campaign, you are going to send an email blast to your community and say, hey guys, we are live and come to support us. And what works best in terms of conversion is emailing. And that's why it needs to be a big community. And why big? I'll give you two numbers quickly since I have just a few minutes left. What we've seen, at least in the reward-based, but I'm sure it's similar numbers. On a qualified email list, the conversion rate at the launch of the campaign is 5%. That means you have 10,000 email addresses, that you can expect 500 backers. And with that in mind, what we've seen also is in order to reach the goal, you need, it doesn't matter if it's the one that is displayed or your internal goal that can be potentially different. But you need to reach 30% of your goal within 48 hours if you want to have a chance to, in 96% of the cases, in order to reach your goal, you need to reach 30% within 48 hours. And it's just math. You have the average perk, average contribution. You multiply it by 5% of your community, and it gives you an idea of how much money you can expect to raise within 48 hours.